Tonight you're not here by chance. You are here because your soul needs rest, because something inside you wants to rest, not only the body, but also the mind. And the ancient wise men, the Stoics, knew how to achieve this. Over the next few hours you will hear millennial lessons, words written by people who faced wars, losses, betrayals, and still found peace in the midst of chaos. Mark Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, they spoke not from the position of theory, but from the inner struggle. And tonight, their voices will become a whisper that will accompany you in your sleep. You don't need to understand everything. You don't need to try to remember every phrase. Just listen and let their teachings cleanse your mind. How the rain cleanses the world from dust. This is not just another video. This is a shelter, a break, a place where you can drop the load of the day and remember that even in the dark there is wisdom waiting to be heard. Let's start. Lesson 1. Everything that happens for the best. Sometimes life puts us in situations that we did not ask for. Unexpected moments, losses, sudden changes, bad news, people who leave, obstacles that seem unfair. And before all this, the mind reacts with resistance. We ask ourselves, why me? What did I do wrong? Why did it have to happen now? And without noticing this, we get lost in the fight against the inevitable, in the fight against what already exists. But the pillars have taught us something deeply liberating. It's not about controlling what is happening, but about finding wisdom in what is happening. It's not about avoiding pain, but about turning this pain into strength. It's not about resisting the facts, but about understanding them and growing with them. Epictetus said, "Some things depend on us, others do not." And among all that does not depend on you, whether past, actions, others, fate, there's only one thing that you could decide. How will you react? Stoicism is not a cold philosophy. It is a medicine for the soul, a way to look at life, which turns what seems to be a tragedy into an opportunity, a betrayal into a lesson, an end into a beginning. In a new beginning, everything that happens makes sense. Not because everything is pleasant, not because suffering is desirable, but because every situation can be a tool for the soul, which is ready to look deep, to see beyond the surface. To understand that often what worries us most is exactly what we need most. Failure can awaken in you a forgotten modesty. Loss can reveal the attachment from which you have not yet let go. Disease can remind you how fragile everything is, and therefore how valuable every moment is. Sudden change can make you leave your comfort zone and push you to the version of yourself that you would never have discovered in any other way. Mark Aurelius wrote, "Obstacles contribute to action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That is, what seems to be an obstacle is actually a direction. What seems to be chaos is part of order. What hurts today can set you free tomorrow. Think for a moment about everything that in the past you considered unbearable. Do you remember that moment? Do you remember that pain? And yet you are here, breathing, moving forward. Maybe wiser, maybe stronger, maybe still in the process, but in motion. The pain was real, but so was the transformation. Obstacles do not deny suffering. They pass through it. And passing through it, they're transformed because they know that behind every event, no matter how gloomy it is, there's a possibility of forming kindness. You can resist the present or allow the present to form you. You can complain about what happened, or you can look for what it teaches you. You can live by reacting, or you can live by observing, understanding, and choosing. The choice is internal, and no one can take it away from you. The next time life surprises you with an unexpected turn, repeat this phrase about yourself. Everything that happens for the better. Repeat without haste, not expecting that you will understand it right away, without having to find the meaning in it right now. Just repeat and let go of resistance. Because sometimes what seems to be the end is actually just a disguised beginning. And what seems to be a punishment is actually a correction of fate, preparing you for something that you still cannot see. You're not alone. You're not lost. You are not broken. You are conscious of the wisdom of life itself. And if you listen carefully, the soul always knows where to go. Today at night, immersing yourself in a dream. Let this thought softly settle in your mind. There are no mistakes on the way. There are only lessons that you have not yet understood. Only opportunities that are waiting for them to be recognized. Inhale deeply. Let go of expectations. Accept what is. And remember that everything that happens for the better. If you're ready to look with the eyes of your soul, lesson 2. Do not control the world. Control your mind. There is a quiet truth that the wise have understood much earlier than us. The world cannot be controlled. And yet, most of human suffering is born precisely from this useless attempt. We want everything to go as we planned, for people to act as we expect, for the weather to correspond to our plans, for time to go in our rhythm, for unforeseen circumstances to disappear. But life does not agree with our desires. Life just is. And every time you face what is, suffering appears. Not because reality punishes you, but because you have not yet learned to let go of control. Stoicism reminds us of this with firmness and compassion. You do not own what happens outside, but you own what happens inside. You cannot control the external, but you can control your mind. And it is in this inner space that your true freedom lies. Epictetus said, "We are not bothered by things, but by our opinion of things." And this is what he gave us the key to freedom from unnecessary suffering. You are not bothered by the event itself, but by your interpretation, your reaction, your recurring thoughts. Criticism has no power over you until you decide that it determines you. Changing plans does not spoil your day until you decide to resist it. Bad news does not destroy you until you make it the center of your existence. Everything begins in a mind, and it is there you should turn when you feel that everything is out of place. Stoics did not seek to get rid of emotions, but they wanted to understand them, to observe them, to control them. They did not deny anger, fear, or sadness. They just did not give them the reins of their life, because they knew that an uncontrollable emotion is like a storm without a compass. It destroys everything on its way, but a clear emotion can turn into clarity. Mark Aurelius, the philosopher's emperor, wrote in his diary, "You have power over your mind, but not over events. Realize this, and you will gain strength." And he wrote this not in comfortable conditions, but in conditions of wars, diseases, losses, decisions affecting thousands of people. Even there his refuge was his mind. You can also create such a refuge, a quiet space inside yourself. Where can you go back when everything around you seems chaotic? This is a place where you decide not what is happening to you, but how you decide to react. Maybe you had a hard day. Maybe something went wrong as you wanted. Maybe someone let you down, or you felt that you did not live up to expectations. And this is normal. You're not perfect. Nobody is perfect. But even now, on this quiet night, you can remember that you still have the strength to choose your next thought. You can let go of the burden. You can breathe. And you can decide that nothing external will determine your peace. They practice this freedom every day, not as a theory, but as a way of life. They train their mind not to be slaves to circumstances, not to react impulsively, not to get lost in useless worries, because they understood that if you can calm your mind, you can survive any storm, and this calmness is not outside. It does not come with success. It does not come when everything is going well. This calmness is born when you decide to accept what you cannot control and focus your energy on what you can change, your thoughts, actions, decisions, relationships. Tonight, before go to bed, do this little exercise. Think about everything that bothered you today and ask yourself, does it depend on me? If the answer is no, let it go. Let it go like a leaf that falls into the water and floats along the stream. And if the answer is yes, then act. But without worry, without haste, without a desire for perfection, only with presence, with intention, and with calmness. Because true domination is not external. It is not about controlling others or that everything corresponds to your expectations. It is about conquering your inner self, learning to live in peace with yourself, regardless of what the world throws at you. And when this happens, when you manage to maintain balance, then you have won, even if everything looks different from the outside, because your soul is no longer bound to chaos. It is free, and wisdom lies in this freedom. Remember, tonight, do not control the world, control your mind. Lesson 3. Calmness is born from the acceptance of the inevitable. There are moments in life when, despite all our efforts, things just do not work out as we expected. Relationships and the plan fails, someone leaves, the door closes, and we feel as if the whole world is turning against us. We ask ourselves why we resist, cling to what is no longer there. And in this resistance, the soul gets tired, the body is strained, the mind is filled with noise. But Stoicism offers us a calmer path that does not promise to get rid of pain, but to teach us to live with it with dignity and understanding. It reminds us that inner calmness is not born from the fact that everything is under control, but from the deep acceptance of the fact that there are things that will never be under control. To accept does not mean to give up. To accept does not mean to humble yourself. To accept means to see reality as it is, and to stop fighting what cannot be changed. When you understand this, something inside you calms down, you stop fighting the past, you stop bearing what does not depend on you, and you begin to live with a world that does not need explanations. Imagine for a moment that you are in the middle of the sea and a wave is coming at you, stronger than usual. If you resist, if you fight it, you sink, you get tired, you get lost. But if you swim along the current, if you swim, if you adapt, then the wave passes and you stay on your feet. Such is life, full of unexpected waves, moments that you cannot predict, events that you cannot stop, words that you cannot take back, decisions that have already been made, and situations that are simply out of your control. The Stoics taught that a wise man does not allow himself to be carried away by a storm, but learns to swim in it. And this requires deep practice, the practice of acceptance. To accept does not mean that you like what is happening. It means that you recognize what is. And from this recognition, you give yourself permission not to suffer in vain. Because unnecessary suffering is born from the constant expectation that the world should be different than it is. We want others to change, for the situation to get better, for time to go back. But all this is impossible. And the more you cling to this fantasy, the more you suffer. There's a great freedom to look reality in the eye and calmly say, this is what is. And although this is not what I want, I can live with it. This does not make you weak, it makes you wise. Mark Aurelius wrote about this many times in his thoughts. Not because he was an emperor without problems, but because he lived among wars, betrayals, family losses. And yet his consolation was a return to the essence. Acceptance of the inevitable and benevolent behavior in what he could change. Accept without pride, let go without attachment. He wrote, and in these few words we find a compass for passing through life. Accept without pride. That is, do not cling to the good as to the eternal. Everything you have, you will someday lose. And this is normal, because nothing belongs to us for real. Not people, not things, not even the body. Everything you have is taken for a while. And the sooner you understand this, the easier it will be for you. Let go without attachment. That is, do not cling to what is already gone. Do not continue to embrace what is no longer there. Do not try to revive what belongs to the past. Let everything flow, let it go, and believe that even if you do not understand this now, everything has its place in the great flow of life. To accept the inevitable means to also accept that you are changing, that you are not who you were yesterday, that every experience, every loss, every silence forms you, like water forms a stone, and that there is growth in this change. Tonight, when silence surrounds you, let these words accompany you. Everything passes, everything changes, everything transforms. Nothing lasts forever. No pain, no sorrow, no fear. And so you do not need to cling to anything. You can let go, you can rest, you can take a deep breath and allow yourself to rest for real. None of what happened today has power over your inner peace, if only you do not give it this power yourself. And tonight you can decide not to give it this power. You can choose calmness. You can choose acceptance. Because in the depth of the soul, acceptance of the inevitable is not a defeat, but a form of victory. This means looking at the world and saying, I cannot change it, but I can change how I live with it. And with this, you become invincible. Lesson 4: the power lies in how you choose to react. In life, a lot happens without your participation. There are words that come without warning, events that disrupt your calm, changes that you did not ask for, losses that you could not imagine. And in the midst of all this, you can feel that you are carried away by the power greater than you yourself, as if the world pushes you to certain actions, as if your reaction is inevitable. But the pillars urge us to stop, take a break, and remember the truth, which we often forget. You cannot control what is happening to you, but you can control how you react. This is a lesson that, if you really understand it, can change your whole life. Epictetus said, "We are concerned not with facts, but with our opinion about these facts." And in this seemingly simple phrase, the door to inner freedom is closed. Not what is happening, but determining what is happening. Your rest, but what you do with what is happening. Imagine a painful situation for a moment. Someone betrays you. You lose something important or face unexpected difficulties. At this moment, your mind can run in 1,000 directions. You may feel anger, helplessness, disappointment. You may fall into a spiral of complaints. Why is this with me? This should not have happened. But you also have another option, which is not always easy, but available to you at any time. The option is clear: to observe, to breathe before acting, to separate the fact from your interpretation of the fact, to take control not of the external world, but of yourself, because this is the real battlefield of the battle of stance, and not the world, but its inner world. And there, in this intimate space, you can decide to respond with humility instead of rage, with patience instead of despair, with understanding instead of condemnation. Stance is not someone cold and indifferent to suffering. It is someone deeply human, but trained not to react impulsively to life. This is a person who keeps calm in chaos, who, instead of giving in to the storm, chooses inner silence. Think about this image: a calmly burning fire, not coming out of control, but restrained and concentrated. This fire is your will, and every time you choose to respond wisely, not impulsively, you ignite this flame. You strengthen your character, become more of a master of yourself. Mark Aurelius wrote this way: "If something external causes you pain, then it is not it that bothers you, but your judgment about it." And you can cancel your judgment at any time, change your interpretation, transform your point of view. This is strength, real strength, not over others, not over circumstances, but over yourself. And no one can take this strength away from you. Everyday life offers you small tests, offensive comments, unexpected obstacles, your own mistakes, the mistakes of others. And in each of these situations, an opportunity opens up. The opportunity to grow, to act kindly, to prove to yourself that you can be above your emotions. We're not talking about suppressing your feelings. We're talking about recognizing them, watching them, and then deciding what you will do with them. This is what distinguishes a wise person from an impulsive one, from a strong one, from a weak one. A wise person feels, but does not become a slave to his feelings. A wise person acts, but does not react. And this is a practice that returns you to the center again and again, returns you to consciousness, returns you to the present time, where you can choose your answer. Life should not be ideal for you to find peace. You just need to remember that even if you cannot change what is happening outside, you can always change what is happening inside. And in this space, in this gap between stimulus and reaction, your freedom dwells. Tonight, when you close your eyes and let go of the day, remember those moments when you reacted with anger or anxiety, not to blame yourself, but to understand. Every reaction was a lesson, and every day is a new chance to choose differently. Remember, you can breathe before you speak. You can observe before you judge. You can choose before you act. And in this pause, in this second of clarity, you become the master of yourself. Perhaps tomorrow something will go wrong as you expect. Perhaps someone will tell you something offensive. Perhaps your plans will change. But when this happens, remember this lesson and ask yourself one question. How do I want to answer? Because this choice belongs to you. It has always belonged to you. And in this choice is all your strength. Lesson 5. Accept what you cannot change, and find peace in this acceptance. On the path of standing, one of the most liberating and at the same time the most difficult to master lessons is a deep acceptance of reality as it is. We're not talking about passive obedience or surrendering to circumstances. This is an active, conscious acceptance. Acceptance born with wisdom and a clear understanding of the limits of our influence. From a moment of birth, we grow with the illusion that we can control everything around us. We want people to be the way we want them to be, to make events correspond to our plans, so that the future is predictable and safe. But reality teaches us that this illusion is just an illusion. The world is deceitful, undetermined, and often ruthless. Mark Aurelius, the emperor of philosophers, reminds us in his reflections that the universe is in constant change and nothing remains eternal. It is not easy to accept this truth. We cling to things, people, ideas, hoping that they will not change, hoping that they will bring us long-term safety and happiness. But attachment brings only suffering because what we love, what we value, can disappear at any moment. Stoic acceptance does not mean denying pain or pretense that everything is in order. It means looking at the pain, recognizing it, and saying, "This is a part of life. I cannot change it, but I can decide how to live despite it." When you practice acceptance, you begin to clearly distinguish two types of things: those that are under your control and those that are not under your control. This difference is the basis of Stoic thinking. What is under your control is your mind, your decisions, your actions, your values. What is not under your control is the body, the opinion of others, glory, wealth, health, death, fate. Accepting what you cannot change is like opening the door to freedom. This means stopping wasting energy on the fight against the inevitable. This means stopping exhausting yourself with disappointment and useless resistance. This means finding peace in the midst of storm. But such acceptance requires practice. It does not happen overnight. Every day brings new trials that test your patience and calm. Every day you need to remember that the fight against the inevitable only multiplies your suffering. Imagine a flowing river. If you try to stop the water with your hands, you will feel the force and resistance of the current. But if you learn to swim along the current, swim with the river, and not against it, you will discover a softer and more harmonious way of life for yourself. Acceptance is to swim along the course of reality, a conscious and brave surrender to what is. We are not talking about giving up your dreams or goals, but about understanding that even if you fight for what you want, in the end the result depends on many factors that do not depend on you. Epictetus clearly expressed this thought. We're not worried about things, but our opinion about them. Therefore, when something happens, we must ask ourselves, can I change it? If this is not in my power, then I must calmly accept what is happening. This calmness is born when you stop resisting reality and accept it as it is. Not with passivity, but with wisdom, with strength, with a firm look aimed at what you can really change, your inner world. To accept also means to let go. Let go of resentment, expectations, impossible desires. Let go of the idea that life should be fair or perfect because life just is. And when you let go, you open up to a deep world, a calmness that does not depend on external circumstances. A calmness that is born from the awareness that no matter what happens, you can preserve your dignity, integrity, calmness. This lesson becomes a balm for the soul. It allows you to rest in the midst of chaos. It allows you to let go of the burden of control and fear. It allows you to find refuge in yourself when you plunge into sleep. Let these words sound in your mind. I accept what I cannot change. I find peace in acceptance, my strength in my attitude to life. And with such an attitude, every night becomes a sacred space, a moment to let go, heal, prepare for a new day. Lesson 6. Real freedom is born when you master your desires. In the journey of a stand, one of the most important and difficult achievements is inner freedom. Freedom that does not depend on external factors, but depends on your own mind. Stoicism teaches us that we are not slaves to our circumstances and the lusts of the world. But in order to achieve this true freedom, we must learn to control our desires. Since childhood, Nature has incited us to want, to thirst, to seek satisfaction in the things that surround us. Object, person, emotion, ideal situation. These desires move us, motivate us, give us direction. But they can also turn into invisible chains that bind us to anxiety, dissatisfaction, disappointment. The problem is not in wanting, but in allowing desires to control our life. When our desires are excessive, uncontrollable, and dependent on external factors, we lose peace. Because the world is changing, things are being lost, people are leaving, and when this happens, we suffer. The philosophy of Stoicism urges us to reconsider what desires deserve our energy and what only draws us to suffering. It urges us to cultivate the right desire, the desire for virtue, wisdom, self-control, inner peace. Epictetus said that we should not worry about things that are out of our control. And this includes many of our desires. Because if we want something that is out of our reach, we are doomed to dissatisfaction. Therefore, the first step to freedom is to recognize what desires are natural and useful, and what are destructive or unrealistic. This is a process of deep self-knowledge, honesty with oneself. Imagine for a moment a life in which you do not depend on the recognition of others, where you do not need constant approval, where you do not burn out from fear of losing material things or social status. Such a life is possible. This is a free life. Mark Aurelius pondered in his reflections on how most of the suffering that we experience occurs due to wrongly directed desires and expectations. We are harmed not by the world itself, but by the desire for things to be different, not the way they are. We are disturbed by attachment to the temporary. Controlling desire does not mean becoming insensitive or indifferent. It means loving calmly, rejoicing in what you have without clinging and reluctantly accepting what comes and goes. This practice of internal control is built day by day, in small, everyday decisions, in a conscious choice not to react to fleeting impulses, in the ability to wait, to postpone pleasure, to maintain balance before temptations. Stoicism gives us tools to train the mind in this direction. For example, meditation on impermanence, a reminder that it helps all the time not to cling to material things and strong emotions. Also, thinking about death teaches us to appreciate the main thing and not to waste time on empty desires. When you learn to control your desires, you find deep peace because you no longer depend on luck or external circumstances. Your happiness becomes an internal choice, a state of mind that is born from self-control and harmony with nature. In addition, this internal freedom manifests itself in all spheres of your life. Relationships become healthier because you are not looking for other approvals. Decisions become wiser because you do not act under the influence of an impulse. Steadfastness before difficulties because you know that nothing external can destroy your essence. Let this thought accompany you while you are resting. True freedom is not to do what you want, but to want what you have, and to be able to wait for what will come. While you are resting, remember that every shortened desire is another step to your inner peace. And in this peace is a real wealth that no one can take away from you. Lesson 7. Control your mind, and you will become the master of your fate. In the vast universe of Stoicism, one fundamental truth stands out with special clarity. The highest power is in the mind. It does not matter what is happening in the outside world, what circumstances surround you, what difficulties appear on the way. What determines your life, your well-being, your calmness, is the control you have over your own mind. The mind is the center of everything. It is the place of your thoughts, emotions, perceptions, and decisions. It filters reality and gives it meaning. It is a voice that explains what is happening and decides how to react. Therefore, for a stand, the first step is inner freedom. Train your mind to be strong, wise, and calm. Epictetus, one of the great teachers of Stoicism, said it clearly. It is not events that disturb us, but our opinions about them. This phrase includes a revolutionary principle. Suffering does not come from the outside. It is born in how the mind interprets and reacts to the outside. Imagine for a moment that a storm is raging outside your window. You cannot stop the rain or the wind, but you can choose to be anxious, desperate, or calmly accept the rain as part of nature. This choice depends only on you, on your mind, on your attitude. Controlling the mind does not mean suppressing thoughts or emotions. It is not a constant struggle with what you feel or think. It is a process of conscious observation, entertainment, choice. What thoughts to feed and what to let go. It is learning not to succumb to fleeting emotions and illogical ideas. Mark Aurelius wrote a lot in his thoughts about what he should take care of his thoughts, what should be the master of his mind, how a good gardener should take care of his garden, what should not allow poisonous thoughts, complaints, fear, or uncontrolled desire to grow out of control. This mental control is the key to not being a slave to circumstances, because the world is full of uncertainty, situations that you cannot predict or change. But if your mind is strong, if your thoughts are clear, you'll be able to calmly go through any storm. Training for mind control is a long and patient path. It includes such practices as daily reflection, meditation, recording of your thoughts, honest observation of yourself. It also includes putting your automatic judgments into doubt, noticing negative or useless thoughts, and replacing them with more useful ones. It is also important to understand that not all thoughts deserve your attention. Many of them arise from fear, uncertainty, past, or uncertain expectations. To calm the mind is like allowing the muddy water to stand up and become clean again. When you achieve such control, you understand that you have an inner strength that cannot be destroyed, that even if the body is weak and the world is unpredictable, your mind can remain strong and calm. That even if others do not understand or criticize, you can keep your peace. This lesson is also a call for responsibility, because if you're the master of your mind, you also bear responsibility for your thoughts and decisions. You cannot blame the environment or circumstances for how you feel or act. You are the creator of your inner world, and when this world is built correctly, it becomes a strong refuge, a place where you can always return to find rest, clarity, and strength. While you are preparing for sleep, let this truth root in your mind. I have the power to control my thoughts. I am a master of my mind, which means my destiny. With every deep breath, feel how your mind becomes calmer, clearer, lighter, and allow this state to prevail. Okay, I've received the content for 555555 mp3 cut.net SRT. Here's the extracted and clean text from that file to lead you into a deep, calm, restorative sleep. Lesson 8. Control your mind to get rid of stress and anxiety. Stress and anxiety are two of the greatest trials that the human mind faces in modern life. But this is not a new phenomenon, and not only in our era. The ancient Stoics already understood how disturbing these emotions can be, and gave deep instructions on how to deal with them calmly and reasonably. In fact, stress and anxiety arise when our mind focuses on worries, on what is out of our control, or on future events that do not yet exist, projecting fear and suffering forward. Our mind is inclined to create internal storms, anticipating problems in advance, putting reality in doubt, and inventing bad scenarios, which often never happen. This circle preserves restlessness and deprives us of inner peace. The Stoics teach us that the key to getting rid of stress and anxiety is to regain control over your mind and your judgments. Nothing external can disturb us if we do not allow it through our thoughts. In order to achieve this, it is important to learn to distinguish what depends on us and what is not. When we face a problem or a difficult situation, we must honestly ask ourselves, does it depend on me? Can I influence it? If the answer is no, then to worry, or to expect bad in advance is a waste of energy. We must learn to let go and accept. On the other hand, if something really depends on us, all our attention should be directed to act with the best intention and effort, without being distracted by fears of the future or memories of the past. Conscious action in the present moment are the ground on which peace grows. Another Stoic practice to reduce anxiety is the exercise of foreseeing difficulties. It is to calmly imagine possible difficulties that may occur, not to be afraid, but to be ready and less afraid if they really happen. Such conscious preparation makes the unknown less frightening and makes us stronger. In addition, breathing and conscious meditation, although they were not called so by the Stoics, were still part of their practice to observe the mind without judgment. When anxiety appears, you need to stop, take a deep breath, and just observe the thoughts without allowing them to carry us away. This brings us back to the center of our inner peace. Stoicism also urges us to live simply and moderately, to avoid unnecessary worries and difficulties that overload the mind. Less expectations, less unnecessary desires, less attachment to the temporary. Fear of the future and anxiety about what has not yet come are invisible enemies feeding on the restless mind. Focusing on what we can control in our thoughts and actions, we restore inner freedom and reduce stress. Finally, remember that calmness is a daily choice. Every time you decide not to give in to fear or anxiety, you strengthen your inner strength. Every moment in which you accept reality as it is, without resistance, you are building a safe shelter in your mind. While you are resting and falling asleep, let these words surround you. My mind is a place of rest. I do not allow stress and anxiety to control my inner world. I act only where I can and trustfully let go of the rest. Let this peace accompany your deep rest and help you wake up refreshed with a clear and calm mind. Lesson 9. The good deed is the only real good and the way to happiness. In the philosophy of Stoicism, one of the most important and central concepts is the good deed. For Stoics, the good deed is not just an ethical or moral quality, but the only real good and the basis of a full and happy life. It does not depend on external benefits, such as wealth, power, fame, or health, because these things are indistinguishable. They can be desirable, yes, but they do not determine the true happiness and value of a person. The good deed, on the other hand, is the perfection of the soul. It is the ability to act in accordance with reason and nature, to live with wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. These are the four main pillars from which the character of a wise Stoic consists. Wisdom is clarity and a deep understanding of what is really important, the ability to distinguish what depends on us and what is not, and to be guided in actions by reason, not by unbridled feelings. Justice is always acting honestly, with respect and attention to others, realizing that we are all part of one community. Courage is strength to cope with difficulties, pain, fear, and problems, without losing calm and honesty. Moderation is restraint in desires, self-control, so as not to allow pleasure and impulse to control oneself. For a Stoic, to develop virtue is a daily obligation and a constant process of self-checking and improvement. It is not about becoming perfect right away, but about moving step by step, recognizing our weaknesses and correcting them with patience and determination. Every good deed strengthens the soul and brings us closer to true inner freedom. Then happiness does not depend on external factors that can change or disappear, but on the quality of our soul. A virtuous person remains happy and calm even in the most difficult conditions, because he knows that his value and dignity do not depend on the outside. His well-being is in his thoughts and actions. This idea challenges the common understanding of happiness in modern society, where it is often associated with accumulation of material, public approval, or achievement of external goals. Stoicism invites us to look inside ourselves, to discover that the source of real happiness is in our character and in how we choose to live every day. In addition, living with virtue creates a strong effect on our environment. A virtuous person inspires others with his example, creates harmony in society, and contributes to the common good. This is a quiet agent of change that changes the world not with empty words, but with firm and honest actions. While you are resting, allow this reflection to softly penetrate your mind and your heart. Virtue is the highest good, the only thing that remains strong in any conditions. To develop wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation means to plant the seeds of the present and strong happiness. Every night is an opportunity to review your day, to remember where you did with virtue, and where you can become better. Such a calm and kind reflection is the way to inner growth. When you close your eyes and plunge into sleep, imagine that you are growing an invisible garden made of values and forces, which will bloom with the first light of every new morning. Let this thought accompany you in deep rest and help you wake up with an updated spirit, ready to live with honesty and wisdom. Lesson 10. Radical adoption. Adopt reality to find inner peace. Adoption is one of the strongest and changing teachings of Stoicism. It is not about passive obedience or giving up before difficulties, but about active and conscious adoption of reality as it is, without unnecessary suffering from negative judgments, rejection, or internal resistance. When we adopt reality, we stop fighting with what we cannot change, and thereby release a huge amount of mental and emotional energy, which was previously spent on fighting with unchangeable facts. This act of adoption does not mean humility with injustice, pain, or difficulties, but it means recognizing what is happening in order to act clearly, reasonably, and effectively based on this real point. Stoicism teaches us that most of human suffering arises due to resistance to reality. We want everything to be different from what it is. We try to control what is out of control and cling to hard expectations. When life does not meet these expectations, we get upset, angry, or despair. This resistance is a constant source of mental anxiety, which can be reduced if we learn to accept the changing nature of all things, including our thoughts, emotions, and circumstances. Everything is subject to flow and change. Life itself is a process that is constantly changing and that cannot be predicted. Adoption of reality also includes adoption of impermanence, the realization that everything that exists is constantly changing, that nothing lasts forever, and that loss, destruction, and death are an inevitable part of the natural cycle. When we deeply understand this truth, our mind stops clinging to fear and anxiety due to the fact that temporarily the Stoic mind develops a calm attitude, the ability to maintain mental balance before the face of change, not allowing itself to be carried away by strong emotions. Radical acceptance helps to develop this calmness, because when we stop fighting reality, we return to our inner stability. This does not mean that the Stoic is sluggish or indifferent. On the contrary, he accepts reality with respect and calmness, realizing that every experience is important as part of his growth and education. After adopting, the Stoic becomes free because his inner peace does not depend on external circumstances. Adoption also opens the way to actions. When we stop wasting time and energy on denying what is happening, we can direct all attention and resources to the right reaction, to solving problems, to caring for ourselves and those around us. Adoption practice is a daily exercise that begins with a conscious observation of our thoughts and feelings at times of resistance or disappointment. At such moments, you need to stop and ask yourself, am I not struggling with what I cannot change? Can I let go of this resistance and accept what is happening? This question opens the way to deep inner change. Having accepted what is happening without judgments, without guilt, and without anger, the mind calms down and becomes clear. The process of adoption also leads to the realization of our human boundaries. We are not omnipotent and omniscient. We cannot control or predict everything. Accepting this truth with respect is a manifestation of wisdom, which makes us stronger. At night, when darkness envelopes the outside world, allow yourself to practice this inner acceptance. Let your mind soften and submit to the reality of the present moment. Feel how the resistance is slowly dissolving, like a morning haze. Adopt impermanence and uncertainty with confidence. Let this deep act of acceptance accompany your sleep, giving you peace and preparing your soul for a new day with renewed calmness, with the understanding that true freedom is to accept and love life as it is. Lesson 11. Virtue as the only real good. The main idea is based on Stoicism. Virtue is the only real good and the only source of true, strong happiness. It does not matter how many material things we have or how pleasant the external life is. because all this is temporary, external, and often out of our control. True peace and joy are born only from the development of virtue within ourselves. Virtue in Stoic philosophy is life in accordance with reason and nature. The development of such qualities as wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. These virtues are the basis of our moral integrity and our ability to meet life with dignity and calmness, regardless of external circumstances. Unlike external benefits, which are unstable, subject to chance, and often generate false expectations, virtue is the inner good, the state of the soul that no one can take away from us. Even if we lose everything else, our virtue remains with us, giving us a safe haven and a reason to move on. Stoics teach that true freedom is to be the master of our thoughts and actions, guided by virtue. When we act in a virtuous way, we are in harmony with ourselves and with the world because we are not carried away by endless desires or uncontrollable emotions. Every difficult situation, every obstacle, every trouble is an opportunity for the practice and strengthening of virtue. In the face of injustice, we must respond fairly, not with resentment or revenge. In the face of fear, we must show courage, not to freeze and not to run away. In temptations and excesses, we must show moderation, maintaining balance and restraint, and strive for wisdom in everything to distinguish the right and act accordingly. Such an approach deeply changes our view of life. We stop looking for fleeting pleasure or avoid pain at any cost and begin to live honestly, focusing on inner growth and moral development. Virtue becomes our inner light that illuminates the path, and as it is strengthened, we experience deep, stable, and calm happiness. In addition, when we consider virtue our only good, we free the mind from the fear of losing the external wealth, status, or health. We understand that none of this can harm our soul if virtue remains intact. Therefore, the constant practice of virtue strengthens our resilience and allows us to calmly go through any storm that life throws at us. Stoicism invites us to think about this truth every day and strive to live kindly in every action, word, and thought. This path is not easy and not fast, but a constant process of self-knowledge, self-control, and constant improvement. While you relax and prepare for sleep, let these words sound in your mind. Virtue is my real treasure. In it I find the strength to overcome any difficulties. My soul is at rest because I act with wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. Let this thought hide you in peace, preparing you for a deep and restorative rest and for the awakening of the renewed, ready to live every day with kindness and tranquility. Lesson 11. The power of the present moment. To live here and now. In Stoic philosophy, the ability to live in the present is one of the most important and transformative lessons on the way to inner peace and the power of the spirit. Our mind is constantly wandering between memories of the past and worries about the future, keeping us in an endless circle of anxiety, regrets, and unsatisfied desires. The hours spent on remembering mistakes or fear of what may happen. They deprive us of calmness and distance us from wisdom. Because we cannot change the past and we cannot control the future, but we can choose how to react to every moment that unfolds before us. And this choice is the basis of virtue. Guilt, resentment, anxiety, fear. When we develop such a conscious presence, we become attentive observers of our thoughts and emotions without being completely identified with them. The Stoics compared this practice to looking at the clouds passing through the wide and calm sky, not clinging to them and not allowing them to take us away with their appearance or color. Losing the present means giving up the opportunity to live in the present. It means giving up inner growth and peace. This practice also encourages you to simplify your life and focus on the main thing. When we focus our attention on the present, we realize that many of our anxieties and desires are superfluous. They obscure our mind and take us away from the path of virtue. So we do not allow external circumstances to control our mood, because we understand that our strength is in our attitude and in the quality of our thoughts. The development of such a presence also significantly improves the quality of our sleep and rest. When we train the mind to let go of obsessive thoughts and remain in the present, we reduce the anxiety that often prevents us from falling asleep. In the feeling of the body touching the bed and the sounds around, these little anchors help to calm the mind and establish a state of complete awareness, which is fertile soil where virtue flourishes. Living in the present does not mean ignoring planning or lessons from the past, but it means intelligently including them without allowing them to become sources of anxiety or distraction. I am here at this moment, open to life as it is. I accept my past, I accept the uncertainty of the future, and I find my strength in the present. Every moment is a new opportunity to grow, choose virtue, and live in peace. Let this soft reflection accompany you to a deep and restorative rest, which nourishes your soul and awakens in you peace and clarity necessary for a complete and peaceful life. Lesson 13. It does not mean that they do not matter, but means that they cannot determine our deep happiness or unhappiness. Virtue is the only genuine good because it depends only on us. While external circumstances can change unexpectedly and are out of our control, our attitude, our assessments, and our virtuous deeds are under our control. It teaches us to distinguish what depends on us and what does not depend on us. Justice motivates us to act honestly and with respect for others, realizing our connection as people. Modesty helps to restrain desires and passions without allowing them to control us. Courage supports us to overcome difficulties firmly and calmly. Realizing that virtue is the only genuine good, we learn to look at external successes and failures in a different way. Loss of property or public recognition does not diminish our value if we remain honest. In the same way, the achievement of glory or wealth does not bring happiness if there is no virtue. The Stoics believed that living in harmony with reason and this reasonable nature, we achieve true freedom and happiness. Such a reasonable and virtuous life is the way to hegemony, fullness, and human prosperity. At night, during the rest, think about these truths and allow the deep understanding of virtue to penetrate into your consciousness. One of the strongest teachings of Stoicism is the complete and conscious acceptance of fate, also known as love for fate. Amor fati is love for your fate. This approach is not a passive humility or refusal of will, but an active attitude of acceptance and love for everything that brings life, including trials, losses, and circumstances that we cannot control. To accept fate means to trust this natural order and to reconcile with reality as it is, without internal resistance that causes suffering. Such a radical acceptance gives a sense of freedom. It removes the burden of struggling with the fact that we are unable to change when we understand that some things are out of our control, such as diseases, death, the actions of others, or the course of history. We can feel sadness, pain, or fear, but we do not allow these feelings to become storms that disrupt our peace. Instead, we look at them calmly, as at the passing clouds in the sky of our consciousness. Mark Aurelius often reminds in his reflections that life is fleeting and everything is constantly changing. Difficulty is not a punishment, but an opportunity to grow and strengthen your character. Such a look prepares us for death, the inevitable and general event itself. Instead of being afraid of it or rejecting it, we learn to see it as a natural part of the life cycle, a step to the final liberation of the soul. This calmness will embrace you and prepare you for a quiet and restorative sleep. Remember that real freedom is not in control of the world, but in control of your attitude to it. Acceptance of fate with love is the key to this freedom. Lesson 15. Discipline of the mind. The art of controlling your thoughts. Scientists teach that our mind is a garden that needs to be carefully cared for. Thoughts are like seeds. Some good ones bring calmness, wisdom, and inner strength. Other harmful ones, anger, fear, resentment, anxiety, and doubt, grow like weeds and spoil our inner world. We must learn to observe them without judgment, to take them by the mind, and to consciously choose which ones to feed and which ones to let go. Stoic mind is strengthened through the habit of strictly observing itself and thinking every day. Mark Aurelius often asked himself in his notes, does this thought bring me closer to the good? Does it help me to live reasonably or take me away from my path? Answering these questions, he learned to let go of thoughts that only caused anxiety. Mental training, Stoicism, also includes preparing the mind for difficulties before they happen. The exercises of pre-admiration of difficulties are to imagine possible problems or losses not for anxiety, but to strengthen the mind and calmly accept the inevitable. When we imagine obstacles in advance, the soul becomes stronger and less afraid of surprises. Disciplined mind is not rigid or cold. It is flexible and stable. It adapts to the situation, learns from it, and maintains internal support even in chaos. This mental flexibility allows us to cope with any situation with dignity and courage. Calm hours before going to sleep. Practice this mental discipline gently and consciously. Remember that controlling the mind is the way to true freedom. Disciplined mind does not become a slave to passions or external conditions. It belongs to itself, and therefore it controls its fate. Lesson 16. The only real value is the purity of the soul. For the Stoics, a philanthropist is not just an ideal or a set of rules. This deep look invites us to rethink our life and desires. We are not looking for happiness in external things or in someone else's approval, but in the development of character and agreement with the mind. A philanthropist, like life according to reason and nature, becomes the light that guides every thought, word, and action. Without wisdom, a philanthropist cannot exist, because without it we act blindly or under the influence of others. Okay, I've received the content for 1.1.1.1.1 at SRT. Here's the extracted and clean text from that file. Fate. Lesson 16. The only real value is the purity of the soul. For the Stoics, virtue is not just an ideal or a set of rules. This deep look invites us to rethink our life and desires. We are not looking for happiness in external things or in someone else's approval, but in the development of character and agreement with reason. Virtue, like life according to reason and nature, becomes the light that guides every thought, word, and action. Without wisdom, virtue cannot exist, because without it we act blindly or under the influence of emotions. Justice is virtue that guides our relations with others. This means acting honestly with respect and responsibility for people, realizing that we are part of the community and our actions affect others. Modesty is control over oneself, restraint in desires and pleasures, and the ability to maintain mental balance. This means avoiding extremes and living with simplicity, realizing that happiness is not in excessive satisfaction, but in the inner order. These virtues are not distant and unattainable goals. These are habits that develop day by day, in small choices, in modest actions that form character. Stoicism teaches that virtue appears at every moment, in the way we respond to insults, deal with difficulties, or choose honesty. Happiness, according to Stoicism, is a natural result of a virtuous life. Remember that the only wealth that no one can take away is virtue. Think about how you can develop wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation in your everyday life, in the little things that form your character. Let these thoughts fill your mind and bring peace to your thoughts. One of the main principles of Stoicism is the practice of radical acceptance. This is a deep and liberating attitude that invites us to accept reality as it is, without resistance and complaints. Acceptance is not passive humility and indifference, but a calm recognition that beyond our control, with the concentration of effort on what we can change. Stoicism teaches that real peace is born from an honest and brave acceptance of this reality. When we stop fighting the inevitable we release a lot of mental and emotional energy, which we can direct to improve our behavior and the development of virtue. Radical acceptance includes, first of all, a clear distinction between what depends on us and what is not. This is a practical obligation that requires training of the mind so as not to fall into resentment, disappointment, or despair when we face difficult events. This is an ability to look at the world and its changes with calm eyes, with the readiness to adapt and respond kindly. Radical acceptance also includes an understanding that even painful or unfair events can bring about an opportunity for growth and internal strengthening. Repeat to yourself that there are things that you cannot change and that this is normal. Allow calmness to spread in your chest, remembering that your peace does not depend on the outside world, but on your attitude to it. Also remember that acceptance does not mean rejection of actions or changes when it is possible and appropriate. It is an acknowledgement that we are part of something greater, that each element takes its place in a natural order, and that our happiness depends on life in harmony with this reality. This acceptance frees us from invisible shackles and opens the way to true inner freedom. In the silence of the night, when the body relaxes and the mind calms down, a person begins to practice his mantra. The struggle for inner freedom, control over thoughts, is not a secondary issue, but a key to achieving calmness and true strength. Because, as the Stoic wise men teach, not external events bother a person, but his judgment and perception of these events. Imagine that your mind is a garden, seeds that you sow. If you plant the seeds of fear, resentment, or anxiety, weeds will grow, which will darken the light and inner peace. But if you grow the seeds of calmness, acceptance, and kindness, the garden will bloom, where calmness and wisdom can flourish. This mental control requires practice and discipline, because the mind is very agile in distraction and falling in unnecessary worries or negative judgments. By teaching the mind to be in the present moment, we can reduce the influence of automatic or reactive thoughts which cause suffering. The Stoics did not use the modern term mindfulness, but their daily thinking and self-checking practices had a similar effect. Another Stoic technique for mind control is the constant inner rational dialogue. The mind, controlled by the mind, is also the mind, free from fear of the future and attachment to the past. The Stoics remind us that we have only the present, and that anxiety about the future or nostalgia about the past are useless sources of suffering. Concentration on the present, on the right actions at every moment, is the best way to live. This means recognizing them, understanding their reasons, and consciously deciding how to act, instead of giving in to impulses. This emotional wisdom is an important part of the Stoic art of life. In the silence of the night, when your eyes are closing and the mind is preparing for rest, allow these thoughts to penetrate deep into you. This practice is not limited to passive acceptance of what is happening, but implies active acceptance, a view of every event, no matter how painful, difficult, or unexpected it is, as an important part of the big plan, which forms and strengthens you. The Stoics teach that life owes us nothing, no comfort, no perfect health, no perfect relationships, no instant success. Imagine life as a powerful river. You can fight the current, resist the flow of events, and drown in this effort. Drown, be disappointed. Or you can learn to swim along the current, use its force to move forward, swim along the waves, without losing the center. This does not mean not to act, but to act without attachment to the result, to plant the crop without demand, to do the right thing with an inalienable reward. There are moments in life that break our expectations: failure, loss, betrayal, disease. At such moments, it is easy to fall into despair and ask, why is this happening to me? But Stoicism offers another question. Why is this happening to me? And for every situation, no matter how gloomy it may seem, a lesson is hidden, a training for the soul, an opportunity to become stronger. Acceptance of fate also means acceptance of all changes. Nothing is eternal. No success, no joy, no pain, no youth. Everything flows, as Heraclitus said, and the desire to cling to what will inevitably change is the true source of suffering. When we understand this deeply, a new kind of freedom appears. And at night, when silence comes and the body prepares for rest, we can look back at the past day and say, everything that happened was necessary. Not because I understand everything, but because I trust that every thread is part of the fabric of my fate. To sleep with this confidence means to sleep calmly, because true calmness is not born from complete control, but from letting go of control and accepting that life brings moment by moment. Lesson 20. It is in these hours, right before sleep, when there are no distracting factors, noise, or urgent business, the mind begins to speak and sometimes does not stop. Stoicism, far from cold or detached philosophy, offers a warm and practical refuge in this reality. Think about it. Many things that bother you at night do not happen at this moment. These are expectations, imaginary scenes, future opportunities, or memories, which are repeated over and over again. Your body is in bed, and the mind is at work the next day, in an unsuccessful conversation, in a mistake made a week ago. Such mental training is very important before going to bed. If you do not calm the mind, the rest will be incomplete. If you don't let go of your worries, the dream will turn into a struggle. Stoicism teaches to perform a kind of mental cleansing before going to sleep. The way you wash your hands or face at the end of the day, the same way you can cleanse your mind. A very powerful historical practice of summing up the results of the day. Every night, before you close your eyes, analyze your actions. Not with a sense of guilt, but with awareness. Were you fair in your words and deeds? Were you kind to those who needed it? Did you miss the opportunity to grow? Did you manage your emotions, or did they manage you? Did you live according to your principles, or did you succumb to temptation? This exercise is not about self-criticism. It is about self-awareness. It's about seeing what you did well and what you can do better. What qualities you showed and what areas still need work. Seneca, a Roman Stoic philosopher, believed that this nightly review was a way to strengthen character and find inner peace. He said, "When the light is taken away and my wife, who already knows my habits, is silent, I analyze my whole day and rethink my actions and words. I hide nothing from myself, do not pass by anything. I see what needs to be improved and what needs to be changed. And this habit will eventually make you a calmer and wiser person. When you recognize your shortcomings, you are not condemned to them, but you're given the opportunity to grow. And when you recognize your strengths, you learn to trust them more. After summing up the results of the day, you must deliberately let go of everything that happened. This means that you do not take worries and anxiety with you to bed. A bed is not a place for planning future battles and recollections of past wars. It is a sanctuary where a warrior rests, where a tired soul finally lets go of the burden of the day, where a pillar, realizing its limits, gives away what does not belong to it and accepts the present as a refuge. Think about it now. Without exception, we face pain. We experience losses, failures, betrayals, disappointments, and moments of deep uncertainty. Suffering seems sudden, like a shadow that covers the path exactly when it seems that you have found clarity. However, for the pillars of suffering, this is not something that needs to be avoided in every possible way. True prison is not in circumstances, but in thoughts that we do not question. When you suffer, the reason is not only what is happening, but also that you are telling yourself about what is happening. Loss of a loved one, refusal, bad news. All this causes pain, yes. But the pain intensifies when we feed it with thoughts like it should not have happened. It destroys my life. It is unfair. Stoicism does not deny pain, does not hide it behind superficial positivity. It respects it, recognizes it, and then turns it into wisdom. Mark Aurelius, in his nightly reflections, thought about the fragility of life, about the inevitability of suffering, and about how everything that happens can help to grow in virtue if you choose to answer nobly. In the noise of success and comfort, many truths remain hidden. But when everything collapses, when confidence falls, it becomes clear what is really important. It is there that transformation is born. It is there that the soul grows. Do not be afraid of suffering. Come to it with humility. Listen to it carefully. Ask yourself, what part do I need to see? What did I avoid? What do I need to let go? Often, pain is a way that life makes us stop, look inside. Remember that not everything is under our control. Do not run away. Do not push it into a corner. Feel it, observe it, breathe with it. Soon you will see that it is losing its threatening form. You will see that it is turning into fertile space for something new. The pillar is not looking for life without suffering, but life in which every experience, no matter how difficult it is, can be accepted with wisdom. Listen to the pain as a teacher and ask yourself, what can I do with this wound if I stop resisting? What part of me can strengthen if I stop running? Your suffering does not define you, but it can teach you who you really are. It can show your ability to withstand, your depth, your humanity. And when you wake up tomorrow, perhaps you will see the world with different eyes, softer, wiser, compassionate. This voice that comments, judges, recalls, admires, criticizes, or comforts is an internal dialogue. And for the pillars of management, it is one of the main pillars of true calm. Imagine that you are alone in a room, without noise, without screens, without distractions. At this moment of complete external silence, there remains a conversation with yourself. This means that the event itself does not cause suffering, but how you interpret it. For example, losing your job, getting a refusal, facing unexpected changes. All this can cause pain, but the pain becomes unbearable when your mind begins to repeat, I am destroyed, I will never cope with this. The first step is to understand that this voice can be studied, that you can move away, that it is not necessary to believe everything he says. Mark Aurelius did not talk to others in his reflections. He talked to himself. This was his way of training internal dialogue. He did not try to convince others, but kept in touch with his principles. You can observe what thoughts visit your mind when you close your eyes. Are they kind or cruel? Do they support you or pull you down? Do they bring peace or anxiety? Managing internal dialogue does not mean completely getting rid of negative thoughts. This is impossible. The mind constantly generates thoughts like a river that flows without stopping. But you can learn not to identify yourself with each of them. Gradually, the voice inside you begins to change. It becomes wiser, calmer, more compassionate. It is not about repeating empty, motivating phrases, but about developing an internal dialogue based on truth, kindness, clarity. Tell yourself, for example, it's hard, but I can handle it. All you need is for your mind not to become your enemy. Because when you are in harmony with yourself, even external storms become bearable. Practice every day the development of the mind that cares about you, does not sabotage, but supports. Stoic mind is firm, clear, humble, trained to see objectively and act wisely. In the next video, we will take a closer look at practical tools and powerful tips to help you continue the process of reloading and personal growth. Do not miss. Subscribe and turn on notifications so as not to miss a single step on the way to greatness. See you in the next video.